You're gonna
All
okay.
right.
You're
Welcome,
gonna record.
everybody. Thank you for joining us today. And Ni hao ma, kuni fa choi. Happy Chinese New Year. This is the year of the ox. And the rest of my presentation will be in Cantonese. Oh, wait a minute. I don't even know Cantonese. Okay. Anyway, my name is Lance Luke, and I'll be your presenter. There's the co host, Martin Pea, who's actually the back end, front end, right and left hand man, all around good guy. He's going to be helping assist uh, the webinar today. Also, he's going to be taking virtual orders for coffee and continental breakfast. By the way, the last seminar, the webinar we did, someone ordered local moco. Sorry, we're sold out this morning. Let me also explain uh, how this webinar feature works. Normally, when you're at a Zoom meeting, you're seeing everybody on the screen, on the video, and everybody can talk. And the difference between our webinar feature is that uh, you can talk, but all your microphones are muted so that I'm doing the talking. And if you want to ask questions, you're free to ask questions, but you're going to have to click on that raise hand icon so that we know you want to ask a question and we can open up your microphone and then you're able to talk live. If you do not want to talk live, you can use the Q&A function and type in your question, and Martin will be happy to read it, and I'll be happy to answer it. Okay. And by the way, this webinar is called Ask the Building Expert. So if you have any questions, just go ahead and ask. And that's what we want. That's what this webinar is actually designed for. Okay. Also, I get paid by the hour. So if you got plenty of questions, just keep asking away. Okay. Um, this is me dressed up in full PPE. The photo was actually taken before the pandemic, so I didn't have a face mask. Okay. Also, this webinar is presented by Construction Management Inspection, Senior Safety in the Home, Kupuna Edition. So before I get into the statistics, 10 years ago, I started writing this book about helping seniors because I've been hearing too many accidents happen where seniors are falling down, getting hurt, and in a bad situation. So I started writing my book, and it took so long that during that whole process, I myself became a senior, and the book is still not done, but it should be finished hopefully uh, sometime this year. There's nothing wrong with being old unless you're a banana. So go back to my book. When I finish the book, please buy the book because I need lunch money, and Martin does too. So today I'm going to be giving you valuable information on general home safety tips, slip and fall prevention, fire and electrical safety, plumbing, gas dangers, and some other good stuff. If you want more information after the webinar, you can contact me or you can contact the CDC, the State Department of Health, National Council of Aging, and even AARP. So let's talk about statistics. Hawaii residents 65 years and older amount uh, to about 70% of accidents. And of these 70% of accidents, more than 70% of those accidents occur in the home. So that's why it's very important to be aware of situations or conditions in the home or around the home that could be hazardous. So let's continue on. So general home safety tips. And I got some interesting stories. If you can see the photo on the left, it's a very steep driveway. And there was this house up St. Louis Heights where the driveway was steep. And there was a garage, but the owner's son had a car parked in the garage that he was so-called fixing it up for the past 15 years. So the senior couldn't park in the garage. He had to park in the driveway, and the driveway was very steep. And one day, he parked his car, opened the door, and he lost his balance, and he rolled down the driveway into the street, and he got injured. So the takeaway on this is make sure if your house has a steep driveway, try to park somewhere where it's flat and not so steep, or just be aware of the steepness of the driveway. If you have a deck, if your house has a deck, and let's say most of the decks are made of wood because the houses were wood construction, and only the newer houses, the decks are made of concrete. So if you're live in a house or you have kupuna that lives in a wooden house with a wooden deck, make sure that the deck is sound and it's not rotted. Sometimes you can look at the paint peeling, and that may be a sign that the paint is hiding the wood rot. So if you have sections of the plyboard that are rotted away, it's easy for someone to fall through the hole there. And if your deck is raised up 2 stories and above, that's not going to be fun to fall through and then land on the ground below. So that's another condition to inspect. Now, the paint is not something that is protecting the wood if it's worn down and you haven't painted your house for over 10 years. So the paint is like protection. So if you have a car and your car is painted, the paint protects the metal. If the paint's worn away, the metal's going to get rusty. Same way with the wood. If the paint fails, then the wood has no protection and then is subject to rot and termite damage. Let's talk about stairs. If you look at the photo, do you see anything wrong with the photo? Okay, so some of the steps are uneven, yeah, but then it's missing a hand railing. So you don't only have one problem here, you have two. One is the steps are not level, and that's a slip and fall or trip and fall hazard. And you don't have a hand railing, which is another hazard. Now, believe it or not, a hand railing is required by the building code. And if you look at these stairs, the way the stairs are built, it's not level. And that's also a building code violation. The steps have to be level, and each step, which is called a riser, each riser height has to be the same height. It cannot be different. Like you can't have one step 7 inches and then another one 11. That's a guaranteed trip hazard. Either if you're walking up or walking down, it doesn't matter. If your house is like that and you're used to it, okay, you're used to the problem. But if a visitor comes over and they're not used to it, then it could be an accident waiting to happen. How about your outside of your house? Do you have a messy yard like the photo on the left? It looks like you pass by on the main road and you look at the yard and you think they're having a yard sale, but uh, it's not because you see tall grass growing around all the junk. Now, that's an unsafe condition because if you try to walk around your yard and you trip over a tire or a garden tool or something, that's not a safe condition. Okay. So making sure that your yard is clear, there's no piles of junk. Uh, Sometimes there's a lot of tree branches or leaves, especially when we just had heavy wind. The wind causes a lot of leaves to fall down and branches and all that. Be sure you have somebody clean it up, because that could also be a trip hazard. I've seen heard accidents where people slipped on a pile of leaves, and the leaves are wet or it was slippery, and they got hurt because they hit their head on a rock or a tree root. The photo on the right is a concrete walkway, and as you can see, the dirt eroded away. Every time it rained, the dirt washes out, and then the underneath of the concrete gets eroded, so there's space between the ground and the concrete. And what happens is, over time, and due to the uh, load factor, the concrete starts cracking. And when the concrete cracks, now you have this condition where it's uneven, it's not smooth. You have a difference of elevation, and that could cause a trip hazard. And believe it or not, if you fall and you hit concrete, the concrete is not forgiving. It's just a problem. Okay, have you ever seen moss on a walkway? What happens is the moss is slippery. When it gets wet, like rain, it becomes even worse. And this photo I took is of a, a house in Manoa, and it rains a lot. And what happened is the moss, the algae started building up, and it just got worse. And of course, when it rains, it just becomes a total slip hazard. Now, how to prevent this is you have to pressure wash, and the asphalt started cracking and moss started growing in the cracks, and then it became even more of a hazardous garden in the driveway and the walkway. So a red flag is if you see any kind of green growth or black or brown growth on your concrete slab or your asphalt where it's a walkway, that's already a hazard. So be sure to get that clean. Let's talk about siding of your house. The photo shows wood siding, and you can see the paint peeling off. And you figure, okay, well, the homeowner, maybe he doesn't have money to paint, or he planned on doing it himself, but he got too busy. This photo is doesn't look too bad, right? But here's the situation. I've seen houses where the wood was rotted because of the paint cracking, water got in, and what happens when water gets in, it could attract termites or mold. And in this situation, the homeowner was having health issues. He was getting like asthma, hard to breathe, coughing, and no one knew what the problem was. So he went to the doctor. The doctor did several physicals. They took blood tests and everything. And you know what? They couldn't find anything. And the guy called me and he said, "You're the building guy, yeah? Okay. Some can you check out my house, my siding? And I know I never paint, but um, I don't know what's wrong. I have a health problem." So I go to the house and I look at the outside. I said, "Hey, sure enough, you have wood rot, but the problem is on the inside of his house, there it was dark brown and black stains. And you know what that is? That's a indication of mold." And I determined that the mold spores were going around his house. He was breathing those spores, and it was causing him to have his health problems. So I told him, go back to your doctor, tell your doctor that there's mold in the house, and then see what he says. And By the way, I also told him have a contractor come in, cut out your drywall, remove all the mold, paint the outside of your house, and get it fixed up. And he called back and he said, "Hey, you know what? The doctor diagnosed him for uh, mold exposure, and it was true." And so he told me that the doctor said that you're smarter than him because you figured out what the problem was, and the MD couldn't. I said, okay, that's good, but I just want you to be healthy. So that's a good story because although you may not know what the problem is, it could be something related to your house or the building that you live in. And by the way, this doesn't only pertain to a single family house. If you live in a condo, it also pertains to a condo because I've inspected a lot of uh, townhouse condominium projects where it's wood frame, and we still had the problem. When the condo was concrete, I've seen mold come in through your window frames, your wall. Even if it's concrete, the concrete is not waterproof. It's porous, so if you don't have paint, the water can get in. Okay, I hope the photo on the left doesn't look like your house, but interesting story is uh, there was a hoarder living at this property, and I had to do an inspection, and I couldn't even walk. There was like only a little pathway to walk through, and uh, I actually slipped and almost fell because I stepped on a cardboard box or something that caved in. And the problem is, it's not only a fire hazard; it's also a other hazard where uh, roaches, rats, and other creatures can be living in the house too. And so it's not healthy. Um, and if you see this condition or you know people that have this condition, try to help them out because it's not a safe environment. As you know, there's no way to clean because there's so much junk in the way. You can't really get to anything. By the way, one house I went to, it looked like this, and I said, "Oh, this is sort of like hoarding, yeah." And the lady said, "No, I'm a collector." So I said, "Okay, thank you." And I let her know in one of the rooms, she was a school teacher, and somehow school teachers or librarians, they like to collect reading material, and one bedroom was filled with newspapers, and guarantee it's a fire hazard. So I said, you got to kind of clean up a little. Now, inside of your house, if you have stairs, make sure that the stairs are even, the riser heights are the same height, it's level, you have a handrail, and the steps are not slippery. Some houses that I see, they got beautiful hardwood flooring. Beautiful. It's so nice. And the finish work is smooth. And if you're wearing socks, you can easily slip. So that's just a good uh, tip to be aware of. So I talked about slippery floors. I mean, now they got wood flooring, laminate type flooring, uh, the vinyl laminate, and they got so many different types of flooring material now. But believe it or not, the uh, material can be very smooth when you walk on it. So a test is if you're wearing socks and you walk and it's easy to slip, that's an indication that the floor is too slippery. Also, guess what? If it looks like this and it gets wet, it's even more slippery. So if you look at the photo and you see the reflection, that's an indication that it's so smooth that it's a slip hazard. Now, also, bad lighting can be a problem. I know uh, a lot of people like to save money and they go, well, we're not going to turn the light on to save electricity, or they change a 100-watt light bulb to a 60-watt so it doesn't use that much electricity. Okay, no, that's backwards. What you need to do is make sure that all your lights are as bright as possible, not only for reading, but for just walking around and illuminating what path you're going to take around your house. And also, the bad lighting can create shadows. And when you're elderly person, when you're walking, the shadows could be distracting, or it could look like something that's not there, but it is there. Like I've seen and heard people with bad lighting accidents because they couldn't see and they tripped over a piece of furniture or something like that. Or it could be a kid's toy because you can't see it. Okay, so, taking a tour around the house, let's now walk into the kitchen. Do you have a clean kitchen? Um, you have an oven and your stove? Take a look at the photo on the left. You see the switch? Okay, can anyone tell me if this is like, how are you gonna, let's say you want to heat up a can of soup. So you put the soup in the pot, you put your pot on the burner, and you look at this switch here, and you look and you go, well, what is low and what is medium and what is high? I can't even tell. So for safety purposes, make sure that your knobs and your switches are marked. Sometimes it gets old and you keep cleaning it to clean the grease off, and years go by and the paint and the indicating lights or notations are just worn away because you just basically clean the paint off. So make sure that at your house and your kupuna's houses, every switch and control is properly marked. Okay. Now, very important, your switch for your light and disposal. Some houses have the switches right next to each other, and you don't know which is a light and which is a disposal. So make sure you properly mark them, because if you're having a party and people come over and they're helping you do dishes and someone wants to turn the light on and they hit the disposal, that's not a safe situation, right? So let me go back to your stove and oven. Here's something very important. Do not store anything on top of your stove other than for cooking. So if you have a pot or pan, that's okay. But do not put cereal boxes or use the top of your stove for storage, because I've seen situations where they had cereal boxes and cracker boxes and all all those grocery items are in cardboard boxes and plastic wrap. And if something happens and the switch gets hit by accident, now you got a fire starting because you're cooking your cardboard boxes and your plastic. Okay. Also, inside your oven, even if you do not use your oven, do not store food, grocery items like cereal boxes, bread, or anything like that. Because if something happens and somehow the knob gets turned on by mistake, now you start creating a fire hazard. And I've seen and heard that situation before where the person wanted to turn his stove on to cook something, and he mistakenly turned his oven switch on, and the oven started burning his cereal boxes and bread and catching that on fire. Okay. Also, when you have your stove and let's say you don't have windows for ventilation and you have this hood fan on the top, Um, that that hood exhaust fan has a filter. Make sure you replace that filter every so often, because I've heard a situation where the person had her frying pan on and she put oil in it and turned it on. And what happened was there was so much oil in that hood filter, it was dripping oil down, and there was a fire. So there was a fire that started in that frying pan, and that was a 911 call. Okay, so let's move to the bathroom of your house. By the way, most of the accidents involving seniors 65 and older occur in bathrooms. And why? Well, because it's a wet area. And if you look on the photo on the left, the tub it looks like it's kind of high. And when you're elderly, to to try and get from the floor up over the tub is not that easy. That's why if you have that condition, install grab bars, and that's okay if it doesn't look that nice. We're not talking about aesthetics or looking nice here. We're talking about safety, which is very important. Believe it or not, people actually slip in the tub, conked their head, and it was a serious accident. Okay, so make sure you have proper grab bars. Uh, Maybe if you need a stepping stool to go over the tub, and make sure you have these mats, because by virtue of the construction material that tubs and showers are made, it's very smooth. So make sure you have these non-skid mats, and you can buy those mats anywhere, City Mill, Home Depot, and it's not that costly, but it could save a life. The other thing is, if you have a tub and it's hard to get into, I would recommend remodeling and make a walk-in shower. Okay, so in other words, you just walk in from your bathroom floor and you can walk directly into your shower. And there's renovations done on homes where people are in wheelchairs, and that's a must because they just wheel the whole wheelchair into the shower. And uh, here's a story. My mom had a uh, a tub, and I told her to remodel into a walk-in shower, and she didn't want to spend the money. She was too Chinese, right? And it's like, just do it for safety, and she did it, and she's happy. And other people I asked said I recommended that you do that, and they said, oh, we got quotes from contractors, and it's for the same price of remodeling my whole bathroom, I can buy a car. And I said, yeah, of course you can, but uh, you're at home and you're going to get older, so think about your safety. And then eventually he did it, and then he thanked me later. Okay, here's another story. This person had a toilet, and the toilet was loose at the base, and the toilet could rock back and forth, and water was leaking out at the base. And so much, one day he went into his bathroom and he slipped and fell on the water that came from the leaking toilet. So make sure that uh, you look around your toilet, and at the base, if there's water coming out or the shutoff valve is dripping, you don't want any water in your bathroom. Okay, that's a safety issue. Okay, let's talk about your living room, family room. Um, as you can see in the photo, there's no clutter. It's very clean, and I'm sure most of your houses look like that, right? I'm sure uh, you don't have piles of junk and stuff that gets in the way. So thank you for having your house look like this. if your house doesn't look like this, maybe you would want to kind of get rid of stuff so you got more room to walk around. Okay, fire safety. I've been on probably 10 within the past year, last year, I've probably been on 10 sites where there was a fire. So, in other words, either I'm called to go there while there's an active fire, or I go there when the fire is put out. And it's scary. It's not fun to be there uh, and looking at a house getting burnt down. So, the important thing I want to talk to you today is make sure you have a working smoke alarm. Okay? And what I mean by working is that there's a battery inside it and it works. And if you hear like a beeping noise and it's annoying and the thing keeps beeping, that's a sign that your battery is low and you need to replace it. Okay. Now, there was one house I went to inspect, and the guy had a smoke alarm, but it wasn't working. And so I told him, I said, for safety, you need to have uh, a battery in the alarm. And the guy said, oh, yeah, uh, I had a battery in there, but my transistor radio battery died. So I went up and took the battery out of the smoke alarm because I wanted to listen to the UH football game. And like, okay, when you go longs, just pick up another set of 9 volts and put it in. And by the way, the guy was like 85 years old, and I said, "How did you even get up to that?" Oh yeah, I took the ladder and then I went up, and so I said, "Well, just be careful because your safety is very important." Now, what about candles? There's this idea that if you have candles and it's a lot of candles, enough light that you don't need to turn on the light in your house and you can save electricity because electricity, the cost is very high today. Okay. But not a good idea because you have to protect the candle if you do use it. But the problem is some people forget about the candle and it burns down, or um, they can knock it over, and that's not safe. And I inspected last year. There was a fire in Nu'uanu, um, and the house burnt down because of a candle that somehow fell over and started burning the whole house down. By the way, when I went to inspect that house, the house was a total loss just from one candle that fell down. So it's not very good for to have candles. If it's your birthday, okay, fine, but blow it out, but not around your house. We're not talking about the old days where that's all you had, right? Okay, how about smoking in bed? Not a good idea. In fact, smoking is bad for you anyway. It's bad for your health. Okay, but catching on fire is bad for your health too. So the situation where people fall asleep, okay, when they're smoking in bed and they fall asleep, or they're smoking in their living room and they nod out, fall asleep, and the cigarette drops on the carpet and starts a fire. And if you look at the statistics of fires that were caused by people smoking, it's pretty high. So my tip for you today is quit smoking if you do smoke, or if you still have to smoke, make sure that you don't smoke in bed or smoke in your house and fall asleep. Now, the photo on the right is actually uh, a real photo of a house where somebody was smoking and the cigarette caught the house on fire. And believe it or not, if you look around your house, at your furniture, at your carpet, at your rugs, almost everything is combustible. In other words, it could start a fire. So you don't have too much fire protection in your house, right? Okay, let's talk about electrical. If you look at the photo on the left, if your house has all these wires that look like spaghetti or chow mein noodles or something, that's wrong because you're overloading your power strip. And if you have too many extension cords, that's not right too, because extension cords are only made for one or two items, but now they're selling one where you can plug multiple items in, and they're not telling you, oh, be careful, because if all these things are connected to one circuit, you could overload the circuit and that could cause a fire. um, so be sure to make sure that your house doesn't have this condition. Also, the photo on the right is of a electrical circuit breaker box. And if you look closely, it basically only has two breakers in it for your lights and plugs. And by the way, this house was an older house built in the 50s. And at the time, the two breakers were enough. But when you have hair dryers and um, high power disposal, and you install air conditioners, now you have an overloaded situation. So don't just have added electrical stuff to your house without having an electrician check to see if the load is correct. I know it's easy to go buy these window air conditioners and install it and just plug it in to your outlet, but that's actually a no-no because the BTUs are too high and you can overload your circuit. Okay. So let's talk about plumbing. So your water heater, it has to have a temperature gauge, and the gauge is basically giving you the temperature reading of your hot water. Okay, so check your temperature gauge. If the gauge is reading at 120 degrees or higher, your hot water may be too high. 120 degrees is the standard. If you have a defective heater and your temperature gauge goes up to 180 or 150 Fahrenheit, you could actually get burnt from the hot water. So usually uh, older people, they're more sensitive, so you may want that temperature adjusted lower than 120 degrees Fahrenheit. If you have a solar heating system, a PV system, or just a regular solar for your hot water, sometimes during the fluctuation of temperature, if one day it's really sunny, then that 120 degrees may be a lot higher. And then during cloudy, it goes down maybe to 90 or 80. Okay, so be sure to check because the hot water can burn you. Also, uh, if your tub faucets have uh, a cold and hot water handle, make sure that the handles are properly marked and the hot and cold is not reversed, because that's another problem I've seen where they make it backwards and the plumber decides, oh, well, it's switched. So on the cold side, on the right side, we'll just put a letter H there so you know it's hot. No, that doesn't cut it. That's actually a code violation. You cannot do that. Let's talk about gas. So on the left, you have a old gas range, and the old gas ranges used to have a pilot light that was always on, so you had always a flame there, and that's not actually an ideal safety condition because if you forget to turn the knob off, then you have this gas on. If your pilot light is off and you turn your knob on, then you just got gas going all over your house. Okay, so most gas ranges now, they have a automatic electronic igniter so that you can click it on, and then the ignition would start with a spark, and then the gas would go on. Okay, the older ones, if you have to light your gas range every time with a match, then that's not, I mean, replace your range. That's not safe. Also, in the old days, they installed a gas shutoff valve, and make sure you have one. In the old days, there was no valve. Okay. And then later on, they added a valve, and the valve looks like the photo on the right. Um, they installed the shutoff valve right behind the gas range. Now, the reason why it's a problem is because if you're cooking and all of a sudden there's a fire and you need to turn your gas off, you're not going to be going and pulling your range out that it's on fire to turn the gas shutoff valve. So make sure that that shutoff valve is located not behind your range, but somewhere on the side, like in a cabinet or and on the side by the wall. If you have a gas water heater that's in your garage, make sure that that heater is located um, or raised 18 inches above your garage slab. Why? Because there's a pilot light. Most of the older gas heaters, they have a pilot light that's always on, so it's a flame. And if your heater is mounted like right on the ground, it sits on the ground, and people store hazardous or flammable combustible materials, like let's say you have a lawnmower and a weed eater, and you store your gas can in your garage too. If someone kicks over the gas can, now you got this gas flowing down to the water heater where there's a lit pilot flame light there. Then guess what? Now your whole garage is burnt down, and then your gas heater could explode too. Okay, so these are some of the important tips for keeping you safe in your home. Also, wanted to share this COVID-19 warning, shelter in place. Well, a lot of older people, they're at home, they're not going out, and that's safe when you're not going out, but um, be careful of people that are coming into your house too, because you don't know when or where they were, or whether they're exposed to somebody else that had um, uh, positive COVID-19. Yeah, so make sure you keep safe in your house. Also, if you go out, follow the guidelines. You know, it's by law, you got to wear a mask, wash your hands often, and just stay safe. Okay, that's pretty much the end of the webinar. I hope you guys learned something. Appreciate you attending. If you have any questions, please post it in the Q&A, or click the um, raise hand icon, and then we can get you going. Um, oh, by the way, future webinars coming up. I have one later on this month on building safety COVID-19, and it's basically about uh, commercial buildings or condominium buildings, entire buildings. So we're going to be covering those topics. And then in March, I have a webinar on concrete repair and another one on construction warranties. So if you go to our website, askbuildingexpert.now.site, you can see the whole menu of webinars that we're giving throughout the rest of the year. If you also have topics that you want covered, shoot us an email and we'll be sure to consider it. If you're part of a organization or association and you want us to give this webinar to your group, then let us know and we'll be happy to try to fit that in also. All right, so we can go into the Q&A section. Oh, before that, I forgot, I put this in, but keep safe, wash your hands, social distancing, wear your mask, and we should, sorry. Okay, so the Q&A part.
Hey Lance, this is Martin. Yeah, there was a question. I guess it looks like it was in the chat. Is what is the best way to relabel faded oven and stove switches? That was a question from in the chat.
Very, very good question. My answer is just buy a whole new stove. Okay, but if you look at the manufacturer, sometimes you can order the new knob or new rings and just replace that, and then you have a brand new indicator now. If your range is too old and the part's not available, that's a red flag. Like, I think it's time to get a new one. By the way, the range oven expected useful life is only 12 years. So if your stove is over that, congratulations, because you got your money's worth. Also, if you cannot find a part, that's already indication that your appliance is outdated already. So I've seen some people, they couldn't get new parts and they got paint and they painted the lines or the words low, medium, high, that. But that will work too. But there's a place called Appliance Parts where you can call or visit and just tell them what the make model number is, and they can tell you, or maybe go online and see if you can order that online. There's a lot of stuff you can order online, but sometimes, just like cars, when it gets too old, it's hard to find the right parts. So thank you. That was a good question. We have any other chat questions or Q&A?
Yeah, I don't see any, but there was someone asking if. Oh, here we go. There's a question in the Q&A that for assistance for climbing stairs in homes, do you have a solution or a recommendation, Lance?
I don't quite understand the question, but
Well, let me just repeat it. For assistance for climbing stairs in homes, do you have solutions? I know you've talked about the rails and those kind of.
yeah, make sure that you have hand railing, and the hand railing is not so wide and big that you can't grab it. If your hand railing is too wide where you can't grab it, then that's actually not allowed. Let's say, the size of a 2x4. If it's a 2x4 size, that's considered hard to grab by the building code. So it has to be skinnier and, like a broomstick, something like that, but bigger. That's easy to grab, right? So that would be acceptable. Now, if you do have hand railing and you're still having a hard time, there's what's called a device where it's a stair lift, and it's expensive because you need electrical too. But it's basically a chair that is designed to go up the stairs where your hand railing is, and they design it so that you sit in the chair, you press a button, and it takes you all the way up, and there's a button that takes you all the way down. And I've seen some of those in very expensive houses. They have those, if you want to see one, you go to Chinatown, and United Chinese Society building has one, and um, they use it all the time, and it's practical, and you could install it in your own house too, or even on the outside of your house, and you just gotta contact these companies that design and make these, and they can come on and give you a quote. So that's thank you. That's a good question also.
Yeah. And Lance, I think that was, yeah, that was part of that original question about assistance in climbing stairs. And I guess the part of that solution that you gave that seemed to be a consideration. Is there anything? I'm not sure what the cost is of those kind of things, but I have heard about those chairs, and even some neighbors are thinking about them. But is there anything cheaper? I guess the rails, you got to lift yourself up. The chair is, I don't know what those costs are. Is there any other kind of alternatives for that mobile kind of getting up, besides installing an elevator or something?
Yeah, get your grandson or granddaughter to help you, and it's free. But the cost could be anywhere from 50 to 100,000. And I've had clients who, if you have a lot of money, I've had clients install an elevator in their house, but we don't. It's too costly for that. So it's either getting assistance from somebody, or installing the chair lift, or just trying to tackle it on your own. Basically, those are the options that are available. And by the way, I forgot, we're having a contest. Um, there's a prize, and we already selected the winner, but you have to be present to win. So I'm not sure if uh, that person is here or not. But we did this at random. Out of the 95 people that attended this webinar, we picked a random number, and the number that we picked belongs to Elsie Hu. So I don't know if Elsie is still in the webinar, but you want to know what your prize is? It's this.
Yes, Lance, Elsie's still with us.
Okay, so Elsie, your number got picked, and you win this first aid kit. Okay, because it's along the lines of senior safety. We want you to be safe. By the way, I bought the wrong kit. This is a kit for traveling, safe travel. So we're not traveling anytime soon. So just let us know. Give us your email, your physical address, and we'll deliver this to you, or we'll send it in the mail. By the way, if you don't want the travel kit because you're not traveling, we'll get you the actual non-travel first aid kit. All right. So congratulations to the winner. We have other questions.
Yes, Lance. There is another question here. Any advice to assess a brand? And I think this is appliance for long-term reliability, looking to buy cooktop, insert, and refridge, especially for safety kind of appliance equipments. Any advice?
Yeah, there's a good magazine and an association called Consumer Reports, and I'm not promoting them, but I read that often to do research on brands, and they don't. The thing I like about them is they don't get donations from manufacturers or other people that can influence them. It's totally independent. They go and buy the stuff themselves, and they test it. So I really rely on their information. There's a Consumer Reports, and there's a Consumer Resource Center or something like that. And if you do the research, they list down all their brands in order of how they test it and reliability and all that. So that's one indication for knowing what kind of brand to buy. Another one is you do a search on the internet and you look at the complaint history. And if there's too many complaints that no one serviced it or they don't follow up with their warranty, then you might not want to consider that brand. But there's good brands out there. So just do your homework. If you need help, shoot us an email and we can try to put you in the right direction. You might want to actually um, visit these showrooms, even by virtual, and look at what they have, and then look at the price, and then go do your own research. When you see the make and model, then go online and type in that information and try to look at the history of that particular model, how long it lasts, if they have any complaints, and all that kind of thing. So that's a good question.
Yeah, good.
Any other questions?
I don't see any either in the chat or in the Q&A at this point. There was just kind of a comment that a neighbor installed a chairlift, and it was very helpful because he had 20 steps from street level to the front door. So that's just one example of somebody who's using the lifts. Yeah.
Well, that's good. I like that story because I've actually inspected for 5 different clients that had their chairlifts installed. And I inspected the installation, I inspected the electrical, and um, making sure it worked. And you're right. It does help. All the people that I've talked to that had their chairlifts installed were happy with it. Even um, paying the price. At first, they thought it was too much, and when they started using it, they decided that, man, it was worth it. Personally, I live in Aina Haina, and I have 49 steps from the street up to my house, so I get good exercise, and that's a prime condition for one of those chair lifts. Also, that's on the outside. There's 2 types of lifts. One you can buy for the exterior, for the outside, that's subject to the weather, and there's another type where if it's inside your house, it's not subject to rain, sun, and all that. So hopefully everybody enjoyed the webinar. We enjoyed having you. It's good information, and hopefully you can share some of this information with your family and friends. And we really appreciate you attending the webinar with us today. We know your time's valuable, but it's also valuable to keep safe and keep healthy. So until the next webinar, hopefully you tune in, and we'll hopefully see you again. Thank you very much. Bye.